Well, hey everybody, this is Chad Jordan from Sport Clips. This is another edition of our Hall of Fame podcast, and this is going to be part of our Haircuts with Heart series, in which we look at a couple of the causes and partners that Sport Clips supports. One of our favorites, of course, is St. Baldrick's Foundation, which is all about childhood cancer research and getting funding for it. We've had a number of podcast guests featured with St. Baldrick's Foundation. We've interviewed Kathleen Ruddy, the CEO. We've had a couple cancer survivors. We've had the mother, Robin Raphael, from St. Baldrick's, a mother of a young boy who died of cancer, and very passionate about this cause. Sport Clips was the first national partner with St. Baldrick's Foundations, and we pledged $1 million back in 2016. Over a 3-year period, we fulfilled that, and then have re-upped and done it again. So very pleased with our partnership and with the work that they're doing. Many of our stylists across the country participate in Brave the Shave events where they'll go and they'll be on stages and in rooms of screaming people cheering the shavees on. Stores around the country do raffles. They do all sorts of fundraising efforts for St. Baldrick's. So Sport Clips and St. Baldrick's go together like a hand in glove. So I wanted to put a face and a voice to St. Baldrick's Foundation, to the podcast. So I'm very pleased today. I'm going to go ahead and have my guest introduce herself, what her role is at St. Baldrick's, and we're going to get into kind of some of the details of what the foundation does.
Chad, thanks for having me. I'm Jane Hoppen. My official title is I'm the Director of Family Relations for the St. Baldrick's Foundation. I just celebrated my 13th anniversary with St. Baldrick's.
Wow,
so,
how long has St. Baldrick's been around? How long?
Well, the foundation became an independent foundation in 2005.
Okay.
So I joined in 2006.
Yeah.
I was staff member number 7, which is hard to believe.
Yeah. Lucky 7, man.
That was a good number, right?
Yeah.
And June 19th was my anniversary, so not too long ago. So
I know you've seen a lot in your 13 years, a lot of progress. You've influenced a lot of it, obviously. Can you give me a rundown on what you had a fancy job title, Director of Family Relations? Can you give me an explanation of what that role does, what you do at St. Baldrick's?
Sure. Well, I'm not much of a title person.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. We'll throw that out.
But I think I have the best job at the foundation.
Oh, okay,
personally.
Great. Mm-hmm.
I get to work with a great team of people that get to interact and support kids with cancer and their families on a daily basis. That's what we do in a nutshell. Welcome them, encourage them to tell their story so that we can share their story, to inspire other people to get involved.
Are these kids and families that have been diagnosed and are already involved in a St. Baldrick's event, or you are aware that they've been diagnosed and you reach out to them? How does that work?
So it kind of runs the gamut, really.
Okay.
We have not quite 6,000 active honored kids and families that are registered on the website, have a site where they can showcase their story in a nutshell, photos, videos, and also I think is really cool is show where other events and participants, teams, fundraisers can honor them, can link back and forth.
And an honored kid, what qualifies someone to be an honored kid?
That they are a child of cancer.
Okay.
Whether they are living, whether they are deceased, whether they are in treatment, whether they are an adult now and they were in treatment decades ago, they are still an honored kid with the foundation.
And honored kids with honored families. That's any family member that
absolutely
is part of that network.
I mean, this isn't, there's a child who has cancer and is going through treatment, but it impacts the entire family, siblings, parents, extended family, and certainly want to make sure we recognize that as well.
So then can you walk me through what a typical, not a typical day, but how the process gets initiated, what kind of support that you're providing, kind of those details?
Sure, absolutely. So people register their kids on our website to be an honor kid. Obviously have to go through the process of kind of setting up basic information. And certainly we want to make sure they sign a release that it's okay that we share that information.
Yeah.
But they hear about it through a variety of ways. a lot of it is my neighbor shaving his or her head in honor of my child, and they want me to sign my kid up. So let me learn more about what you do.
Yeah.
And we also help with the Children's Oncology group, which is the largest group of more than 230 institutions that treats 90-95% of kids with cancer in the U.S. We provide their patient handbook that goes out to every newly diagnosed family at the hospital, and there's information about St. Baldrick's there. Hear about it, and you're like, oh, my kid is, you're thrown into this world. Right. You're trying to figure out what in the world is going on, and then you're like, oh, this is something that I want to do. I want to get involved. I was talking with a family not too long ago out in Colorado, and I said, how did you hear about it? And they said, well, our daughter was recently diagnosed, and obviously we were trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B every day. And they said, hey, just want to give you a heads up. You're probably going to start to see a lot of people who had hair, who no longer have hair, walking around the hospital. Let me tell you why. And they said, this is St. Baldrick's. This is something that they support us as an institution. And
so actual staff members?
Wow. Doctors and stuff. And they were like, I need to look into that. Yeah. So sometimes come to us that way through connections with their doctors, which is certainly incredibly meaningful as well. Yeah. Or they just hear about it. Maybe they don't have someone they know who's shaving or participating in an event, but they see one nearby and they think, I want to look into this. I've been with the foundation since 2006, but I started as a volunteer in 2004. Okay. So my history goes back prior to my time as a staff member. And never forget one of our first events we had here. It was March of 2006, downtown Raleigh, at the Hibernian. And there were a couple of families who came, and one mom just started crying. And I was like, what's going on? And she said, I can't believe all of these people don't know my baby, who is in the hospital right now, but they're doing this for her. Yeah. That's pretty powerful, right? That's pretty
what got you to volunteer back in 2004? I mean, was there a connection or?
Fortunately, no. Okay. Fortunately, no, not a personal connection, but so I went to Carolina for college, and
so you're Tar Heel?
I'm a Tar Heel.
Okay, you can stay on this podcast then.
I'm allowed to stay?
Right,
Thank you.
If it was Duke or NC State or what,
it would
you
be
were going to have to
questionable,
go. Right?
Yeah. We would have said thanks, but you got it right.
All right, good.
I was a psychology major, and of course I'm sure my parents were thrilled with, great, what are we going to do with this? And so, like all good psychology majors, I ended up working in insurance, right? Because that's just a natural progression, right? But I made my way back to the Triangle area and ended up working for a company called the Redwoods Group, which at the time was the largest provider of insurance for YMCAs. Okay. Hard to insure market, right? And lo and behold, one of St. Baldrick's founders, John Bender, happened to be our reinsurance broker. Wow. And he was in town negotiating the reinsurance treaty. Really exciting stuff, right?
And he's from New England or?
New York,
New York, okay.
Yeah. And I remember he called all of this, like everyone in the Redwoods into our conference room. And at this point, St. Baldrick's, the first event was in 2000, so it was not very old.
It's still getting off the ground.
And not an independent foundation at that point either. And he said, I appreciate you all supporting this head shaving thing I do called St. Baldrick's, and you're lucky you have Duke and UNC in your backyard, that if you have a kid with cancer, you have someplace close you can go for treatment, but I don't want your money anymore. Okay, great. He said, I want you to have an event. You need to have an event. And I'm not going to get on a plane and go back to New York until somebody says they're going to organize an event. And this was winterish 2003, I believe, right? So my friend Jill Kaufman, now Weinsteck at the time, and I said, well, we'll do it. Yeah. Why not? And so we did. We, along with the support of tons of people at the Redwoods Group, helped organize our first event that we had here.
And it was a shave event?
It was a shave event. We had 19 shavees on March 17th, because then we determined it had to be on St. Patrick's Day, right? At a little pub, W.B. Yates, that no longer exists anymore in Chapel Hill. And we shaved 19 heads, raised over $41,000. And
you were tickled pink. You're like, this
tickled green.
Yeah, okay, there you go. I like that, yes. But, I mean, that's a big deal, a big amount of money for your first time.
It's huge.
And I bet it's gotten bigger, better, there's been
well,
other events around here since then. That was the start of it.
Well, Kevin Trapani was the CEO of the Redwoods Group at Shaved, and David Hall, who was my boss, and we had some big hitters who were shaving. But yeah, I mean, that kind of started it.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Raleigh in 2005 and had an event there, and then 2006 we ended up with 2 events, and then it just has grown and grown and grown. And you know, I don't deserve the credit for that. Yeah, Jill and I helped start it with everyone from Redwoods, but don't deserve the credit for that.
But you took an important first step, which is part of the reason for this podcast that I wanted to have you on, is there are people either watching on YouTube High or listening to the podcast are wondering, what can I do? What kind of impact could I make? You were a yes. You said, yes, I'll do it. I'll take that first step. And hey, I don't know what would have happened if you guys hadn't, whether somebody else would have, or if it had fizzled, or who knows. But it's certainly the ripple effect of what you guys were part of. And at Sport Clips, that's what we kind of teach and want to broadcast out to our team and our team members. Just get involved, do something. You never know the impact that you're going to make. And that seems to be the case with you.
Well, and I'm going to tell you a little story about how we kind of really blew up in 2006. But I won't forget that. I'll come back to it in a second. But I think something you said there is really important, because when you see a problem that just it seems so difficult, so big, and you look at kids who are sick and you think, God, this is still the #1 disease killer of kids in the United States, it's easy to look away. It's easy to think that is just too much, right? But it's that little by little of the little thing that everyone has the power to do something, right? At your stores and the stylists and your sports club team in general, take a little bite, and that little bite adds up, right? I can't carry a tune in a bucket, and I remember, but you know, when you're in elementary school, everybody sings because it's really cute when all the kids sing off key. But one of the things I remember, the song we used to sing is, you know, little by little by little by, big things get done. And that's what we're doing, right? And, you know, in 2005, I happened to be at an event for another cancer-related organization. And
it's prior to your St. Baldrick's.
This is prior to working for the foundation, but not prior to my work with St. Baldrick's. And one of the women kind of headlining the event, or at the event, was Sharon Delaney McLeod.
All right.
At the time, she was one of the main anchors on our, was then the NBC affiliate. Never met her before in my life. Certainly knew who she was. She had a daughter, Macy, who was diagnosed with AML and was in the middle of treatment. And I went up to her at that event and I introduced myself and I said, you don't know me from anybody, but this is what a group of us are doing to help fund childhood cancer research. And when and if you are ready, I'd love to talk to you. And we'd love to honor Macy. And
Macy, you don't remember how old Macy was at the time?
Well, Macy was diagnosed when she was 6 months old.
Oh my gosh.
And she passed away when she was 10 months old.
Oh.
And, you know, not long after Macy's death, Sharon and I connected. And she's just an amazing person. And she's like, I'm on board. What can we do? And then I shaved my head the next year. I shaved my head in 2006.
Okay.
She helped get Niall Hanley, who owns a ton of the Hibernian and a ton of other restaurants, happens to obviously be Irish, and Sharon's got Irish roots. That didn't hurt. On board, and that whole team had really helped embrace and grow all the events here. So really, really remarkable. So, you know, often you kind of look back and you think, gosh, how did that happen? But then you see all those stars and things kind of align, and those connections. So really, really grateful for them, and really that takes it larger to families who are willing to say, share my child's story. You know, you were asking me a minute ago, and I said I'd get back to it, kind of like a typical day and what we do. And, you know, we make it very clear when we're talking with families that we fund research. Right? That's what we do. We're a part of the puzzle of of the whole childhood cancer landscape, if you will. And so families know up front when they're coming that they are here to help inspire other people to get involved. That we are not going to be able to help in other capacities, but we can hopefully kind of maybe help navigate you on that journey in other ways. But they get it. They get the need for research. They live it every day for those clinical trials, for that hope that if you relapse and you think you don't want to hear, there's nothing else we can do.
Yeah.
Right? Or you are signing those mountains of paperwork for the poison in a lot of ways that you're giving your kid. And that just, I can't imagine how overwhelming that must be. And to know that they can come and say, our ultimate goal is to be out of business.
Yeah.
We want to be able to close those doors.
You'll get back into insurance. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that. That remains to be seen, right? But hopefully I'll have the luxury of being able to do something else from the perspective that we've closed our doors because we've done that. We're not there. We got a heck of a lot of work to do. And that's where we are so grateful to Sport Clips for being our national partner and being a true partner in this. I mean, you said more than $1 million, more than 1.1 million.
Yeah.
Don't shortchange that 0.1.
I'm not
right?
a numbers guy.
I know, but that 0.1 is important, right? And to join us and then to continue and say we're going to continue to do this says a lot about Sport Clips in general, your culture as an organization. And I've been fortunate enough to work with Matt Lewis, who I mentioned the other day.
Yeah.
Gosh, he's been a help and go-to for over a decade.
And Matt Lewis is an AD and a team leader.
Yeah.
For those that are listening that might not know who he is in the Raleigh area, but North Carolina.
And I think it's kind of fitting as I was driving here today, realizing that we are a stone's throw from where the Carolina Hurricanes play hockey, and the Hurricanes are supported by Sport Clips as well, and we've been doing a head shaving event there as well for a decade.
Oh, cool.
And that you imagine outside the arena, you've got a stage set up and a dozen chairs, typically all Sports Clips stylists lined up ready to shave heads. So our support and appreciation for Sport Clips here in the Triangle area goes back further than our national partnership as well.
That's amazing. What are some, can you share any stories of personal connections with either honored kids, honored families, some of the impacts that you've seen over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's an easy thing to do. It's harder to kind of narrow down which ones, right?
Give me your top three. If you can.
Oh, top three. That's asking me to rank. I don't know about that. Well, let me
give me any three.
Okay.
Any couple.
Okay. Well, let me tell a little side note, and then that'll tie into that.
Okay.
So that I think really kind of drives what I hope is our goal on the family relations team, and why I think it's so important. We were fortunate enough, St. Baldrick's was to partner with Stand Up to Cancer to form the first ever pediatric cancer dream team. And back in 2010, I was able to go to a Stand Up to Cancer show. And as I was at LAX, getting ready to fly back to Raleigh.
And Stand Up with Cancer, like the comedy.
Stand Up to Cancer that funds research all over.
Got it. So it's not like a fundraiser from Hollywood stars.
Right. Not. I mean, the Entertainment Industry Foundation does a lot with Stand Up to Cancer, but having that dream team has just done remarkable things for it.
So they're like an advocacy group.
They're a fun. Well,
What's the dream team itself?
So the dream team is what Stand Up to Cancer would fund.
Okay.
So they say, we're going to put together this dream team. We're going to give you a pot of money, and we want to see results.
Gotcha.
Right.
All right.
And they've done it in different types of cancers, but with pediatric cancers, we were their partner go-to with that.
Got it.
So
you're in LA.
I'm in LA. I'm at LAX. I'm flying home.
Okay.
And I'm just kind of looking around the gate, waiting to board, and I see, I'm like, someone looks kind of familiar, and it was Elizabeth Edwards. You know who Elizabeth Edwards was? It was a
wife of
John Edwards,
running for president,
based here in Chapel Hill,
and
she had breast cancer. She had been at the show, and she was wearing this trench coat kind of thing, and I almost didn't recognize her, but I could see kind of through the top of her like Stand Up to Cancer shirt, and she was on the show briefly. So I went up and I introduced myself and told her about St. Baldrick's, what we do. She asked about my kids. Told her about my kids, and she said, "What can I do to help?" September 2010. And she's like, we've got to do something now. And then we kind of went our separate ways. She was seated closer to the front of the plane than I was.
Yeah, okay.
Just saying.
I can imagine.
And get off the plane in Raleigh and walking. Ended up, she was moving slower than I was, and I ended up walking beside her. And I'll never forget, she looked at me and she said, "Keep up the good fight. These kids deserve it. You are doing important work.
Wow.
Do that and then go home and hug Andrew and hug Ella. That's what you need to do." 2 months later, she was dead.
Wow.
And the reason I tell that story is because after she died, I had read some of the stuff she'd written, but I had this quote, and I printed it out because I didn't want to do her a disservice by not saying it correctly. But this sums up a lot of what I think we do with our families, try to do with our families, and why it's so important. And side note, she had lost a son in a car accident at the age of 16, so this was something that's kind of top of mind for her.
Yeah.
She said, "If you know someone who has lost a child and you're afraid to mention them because you think you might make them sad by reminding them that they died, they didn't forget they died. You're not reminding them. What you're reminding them of is that you remember that they lived." And that is a great, great gift.
Yeah.
I think of that every single day.
Yeah.
Every day. And so that's kind of my philosophy. When you're talking with a family, especially a family whose child has died, first thing I want to do is say that child's name. Because we are honoring their life. And if a family of a child who has died or been through the horrors of cancer treatment is entrusting the St. Baldrick's Foundation with their story, then we owe them to get it right.
Yeah.
To do right by them. And so that's kind of a guiding philosophy for me, and what I try to share with others too, if I have the opportunity to do. Cancer does not define these kids. It's not who they are. It's a part of their story. It's a part of their journey, but it's not who they are. Yeah. It will forever be part of who they are. But what these kids want to be able to do is just to be kids, right? And that's what St. Baldrick's is existing to do. We can't keep them from getting cancer. What we want to do is get the money in the hands of the brilliant researchers who are going to find those better treatments, those less toxic treatments, so they have less long-term side effects, and those cures. And, I get to, as I said, we have almost 6,000 honor kids and families. I have the privilege of working with our ambassadors. Typically, we have 5 ambassadors a year.
What's an ambassador?
So ambassadors are usually stories that we highlight more throughout the year.
Okay.
That we, pitch their stories more to national media. That we are following them throughout the calendar year of what's going on in their lives, and really having people have a face.
Yeah.
Kind of more of a face.
And they've agreed to give more access and more information to you and keep you in the loop more.
And they're willing to do that,
yeah.
Obviously, right? So Justin Miller was a kid from Colorado who was one of our ambassadors, and Justin fancied himself quite the celebrity, and he was. Justin was involved with St. Baldrick's for many, many years before he became an ambassador, and then, but he passed away in 2014. He fought neuroblastoma on and off for 8 years, and he was just one of these kids that didn't remember not having cancer.
Yeah. Right?
And it was always something. It was always one fight after another. But Lori, his mom would say, we always had hope, we always had research. We always needed the research to stay just ahead of Justin.
Yeah.
Eventually that didn't happen. Yeah. But Justin called me his agent. I was Agent Jane. Okay. And it's like, what's my next show, Jane? What's my next thing that I'm going to do?
Because you're gigging him, you're booking all these gigs for him to go speak, and he was like a star.
He was a star.
Yeah, I believe it.
He really was. And I was in Washington, D.C. just a few weeks ago, and we were there for an advocacy event and a head shaving event, and we do these things called Faces of Childhood Cancer, where she was 8.5, 11 sheet of paper with a couple of photos and different bio information, and we did one on Justin, and I snapped a photo and texted his mom, and I said, once an agent, always an agent. He's here representing today, as always, and he's just such a remarkable kid and had such an impact on so many people, and still does.
I had the opportunity to interview Scott. He's a 10-year-old, getting ready to be 11, and he seemed to light up when he began to speak about childhood cancer and the research that's needed. In fact, at the end of the podcast, his interview, I say, hey, do you have anything else that you want to add? And I was expecting him to, I had this root beer for him, all this kind of stuff. I expected him to be, and he had a statement, kind of a mission statement that he wanted to say about the importance of doing whatever you can, whatever it takes, even if it's $1, that kind of stuff. And I was just so blown away by his poise and the fact that he's willing. I think a lot of cancer survivors and people going through cancer feel like they have a mission to give back and to make sure that everything is done that can be done to stop cancer. And sounds like Justin was wired the same way, and some of these other ambassadors and honored kids that you've come across.
Yeah, well, Caroline Richards is another example. She was a 2015 ambassador and who died just a few days into her ambassador tenure, osteosarcoma. And I was on the phone with her, I guess it was December, and before she passed away in January 2015. And, what were we talking about? Her hedgehog. Herbert the hedgehog, right? All she wanted was a hedgehog.
Yeah.
And
just a kid.
Yeah. Right? I mean, she's 12. My son just turned 12. That's a different sort of perspective there for sure. But it's, I've just met some just remarkable people that are like family as a result of getting to do what I do.
I just mentioned, Scott, the importance of funding. So my brother had the same exact type of leukemia that Scott had been diagnosed with. At the same time, my brother was 3, Scott was 3 when he was diagnosed. And my Ryan, my brother, was in the 80s. So there just weren't many options for him.
Right.
Whereas Scott, now these 30-some years later, he had a head full of hair. He's 10 years old. He's been out of treatment for 4 years. He's I called him the after picture. My brother was the before. And for me, just such a great reminder of what can be done. It won't be done overnight.
Right.
But the funding that has gone towards the research and the way it's paying off for many of these kids now is tremendous.
I think that's a really important thing to mention, because you certainly don't want to negate any of the progress and stuff that's been made. It's important to realize when you're talking about a lot of stuff has happened in acute lymphoblastic leukemia, but when you're talking about childhood cancer, you're not talking about a singular disease.
Exactly.
Childhood cancers is plural.
Yep.
It's easier to kind of lump it into one in some senses when you're kind of big picture discussing it, but 12 main types of childhood cancers, dozens of subtypes within them, some that have no cure today, and many that don't have the cure rate or success rate of certain types of leukemias. So we want to celebrate that, and we want to highlight that. We want to show, as you do, the important how progress has been made. At the same token, understanding and stressing the importance of we got a long way to go.
Yeah. What have you seen in your, speaking of time, in your 13 years almost at St. Baldrick's?
Yeah, I mean 15 if you count.
Yeah,
if you count
that volunteer
time,
years,
right?
Yeah. What are some of the big changes that you've seen, whether it's in cancer research, whether it's in the foundation itself? I mean, obviously it doesn't look like it looked 13 years ago, 15 years ago.
But everyone was working from their home back then.
Yeah.
I'm still working from home.
Okay.
That's a great thing. But everyone was working from home, and there wasn't an office to
there
go
wasn't
to.
A headquarters.
There was not a headquarters, so that certainly transition has changed. We've moved offices a few times. Certainly a lot more a lot more folks, a lot more teams and departments. When you got 7 people, you all do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I work for a marketing department that sounds a lot like that. So
Yeah.
You're all doing extra duty.
So certainly having, you know, kind of growing up a little bit,
Yep.
you know, growing up and starting to kind of formulate those different teams and different things that outreach. Head shaving certainly still remains the bread and butter of St. Baldrick's, but there are many other ways people to get involved, and teams that kind of help facilitate that, teams that work with different participants directly, not just with our volunteer event organizers, our VEOs.
Yeah.
So that certainly has changed. You know, the rise of the immunotherapy, I think that's such a buzzword in the cancer world, but development of that to really, for relapsed neuroblastoma, for relapsed kids with leukemias,
Yeah.
Especially to be able to have this, harness the body's immune system to then fight the cancer is amazing, and that's something that has really made a difference. We had an ambassador just a couple years ago, Zach Swart, who was treated on a trial that St. Baldrick's helped fund, and he is now just turned 18.
Oh, great.
He went through.
I was bracing myself.
No.
What happened?
So no, great. Zach is doing amazing. He relapsed twice with leukemia, ALL, and it just kept coming back. Called it the beast, and it was a beast, and it kept coming back, and now he's doing great. He just graduated from high school. He's going off to college. I think he's moving in. Might be this weekend that he's moving in, and you know, he's able to fish again.
He's taking his childhood back as a young adult.
As a young adult, and he's doing great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
One question I always think when I sit down with somebody that works for St. Baldrick's is, how do you? There's loss that happens in a lot of the relationships that you guys have formed. So how do you guys cope? How do you guys get through knowing this is part of the job? Is it giving a disservice to it because it's part of your life?
Right.
So how do you brace yourself for knowing at any moment, you know, you can get a phone call and it's an ambassador or an honored kid or somebody?
You try to come practice every day from a place of being grateful for what you got. Grateful for those, for me, grateful that I have 2 healthy kids, and knock on whatever, that will continue. I think you honor those who have died by continuing to live and continuing to do all that you can to make sure people don't forget them, but that more importantly that you are continuing to contribute to all of those great things, the cures, the less toxic treatments. Listen, I do not have a scientific mind. As you can tell, I can't remember certain dates and certain things, but I remember people.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what is really, really important. St. Baldrick's is not going to fund me to go into a lab. That would be a very poor decision. But I can do something to help fund those people that are doing that every day. And it's a calling for them, I believe. I truly believe you can be a pediatric oncologist, a researcher in this field. It's a small community overall when you're looking at kind of the research landscape and the medical landscape as a whole. You know, can't forget everything that they do every single day.
Well, I think there's a calling for every single person that's at St. Baldrick's to do what you guys do. One of the things as I wrap this down, when you were mentioning Elizabeth Edwards' quote, and then my own family history with burying my brother Ryan. So my parents live in the same town we live in, and I have 2 girls, and I have a son. And my son is Ryan Michael Jordan, named after my brother, and he is my sister has 3 girls. I have 2 girls and a boy. He is, can you believe it, the only son only grandson my parents have, and just happens to be named after their son that they buried. So if you don't think he's the most spoiled kid you've ever met by his grandparents, who get to call him the name of their own son, you're right. That is something special.
It gives me goosebumps. It really does. It does. It gives me goosebumps.
It is something special. So, so being able to talk to parents that are grieving, but being able to bring up the memory of their kid, their son or daughter that passed, it's nothing to be ashamed about or walk on eggshells around. Make sure that you honor that memory. I think that's a great lesson from the podcast today.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work you're doing. Not just for
pleasure.
carving out time for me today in a hotel conference room in the Cary, North Carolina area, but yeah, for everything that you and your team are doing. Keep it up. Keep up the good work. If you keep it up, we'll keep it up on our side. So
we'll hold you to it.
Yeah,
all right.
So
That's a deal. I think you just did. You're gonna edit that out.
No, I'll keep it.
You'll keep it.
If you guys keep going, I'm sure we will too. And
we don't
appreciate the partnership.
There's no choice.
Yeah,
got to keep
that's
going.
right. But hey, we're trying to get you out of a job, right?
Well,
so,
that's
out of this job at least.
That's right.
So,
we got to keep going.
So we're
These
going to
kids
do
deserve
that.
it.
So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you everybody for listening, and don't forget September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. I get that right?
I was going to mention that.
Okay.
It is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month.
So do whatever it takes to make a little bit more effort to fundraise, raise awareness, Brave the Shave events. There's a lot going on right now.
I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities in the Sports Clips team to get involved, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's our pleasure having you on, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you,
and tune in next week for another episode. Thanks, everybody. Hey, all right.
How was
Look at
it?
that, 37.